So first you just have to familiarize yourself with the power. So that's obviously the main switch. You can ignore this one. This is to lock the instrument in place, okay? So it's to lock this in place. So you'd only be using it during your consult. That's to adjust the chair up and down for your patient to be comfortable. Okay, and these two auxiliary ones, just turn them on. Not sure if you've turned everything on properly. You can just check if this knob turns on and there's a blue light underneath. If it's not going blue, then it's probably not a problem with all your knobs and things like that, and it's probably more something to do with the power switch. You just have to move this cap off and put in this calibration rod. Alright, put it so that the text is facing you. That way it can help you have more of a detailed stimulus to focus on. If it's this way, it's going to be a bit hard for you to know when something's clear and when it's not. So rotating this knob, you can see the light actually going brighter and more dim, okay? So this controls the intensity of the beam. Now, the other knob on this side, which is the background, watch as I rotate it, it's making a background light, okay? So sometimes you might want to use it to have a diffuse viewing, but it's not really, we don't really use this often because a lot of the time our techniques will require contrast, and you can see as I'm increasing the background light, it's flushing out the detail. You can hardly see the letters that say back. So let's concentrate on the top of this. As I'm rotating this, you can see it's moving up, the whole instrument's moving up, and I rotate it the opposite direction and it's moving down. So rotating the joystick is for moving up and down. Otherwise, moving the joystick side to side, it's pretty self-explanatory. Now we've got this. What happens as I'm rotating this? The beam width is changing, okay? So in one direction, it's going wider. In one direction, it's going more narrow. Up here is the beam height, okay? So when we're going more towards a conical beam, it's going to be a shorter beam. Otherwise, we can go on something a bit longer. If we don't want to make the pupils, the student's pupil or our patient's pupil go tiny, we might choose to narrow the beam. Alright, next we have magnification. So you can see this here. So we're on 10 times mag now, 6.3. Alright, so you can adjust your mag. These are the moderate to high, 16 to 25. 40 is high magnification. Up here is the filters. So you can change the filter light. This is more relevant once we're going to be doing things like fluorescein. Down here is the angle. So it will help you for certain techniques. So for example, if you've got to do 30 degrees on either side, you can move the illumination 30 degrees this way, and then you can move the sight piece the other way. All right, so obviously 60 is 30 plus 30. In this instance, the light beam is actually focusing in the same position that the microscope is focusing. All right, so obviously there's light beams coming out to here, and they focus in this place. And then there's a microscope, and the focus of the microscope, which is what you see looking through the eyepieces, it focuses in the same direction or the same position. Now, if you're trying to do indirect viewing, you might want to uncouple the system. So do you see how the light is moving at an angle? You guys will try this next week, but basically the microscope is still focused at the same position. So when you look through the microscope, you'll still be looking at the same object, but the position of the light will be different, okay? So whereas here, the light might be shining on what you're focusing on. So for example, say it's a scar in the cornea. When you move this that way, it might emphasize the shadows more involved in the scar or something like that. So it helps you view the scar with indirect illumination. You do that by loosening up this knob, and it helps you uncouple the system. Okay, Farhan mentioned this before. This is the lock. So when it's locked, I'm not that weak, okay, but the slit lamp isn't moving. When it's unlocked, the slit lamp moves really freely. So make sure that you're aware if this is locked or not so that you don't damage the slit lamp. Let's talk about focusing the eyepiece. So this little triangle here shows you where the microscope is focused on, where the eyepieces are focused on. So we start with a +5 in each eye. Okay, and for instance, say I was looking through this eyepiece, I would just close my left eye, I would look through my right eyepiece with my right eye and look at the image inside. And I would just rotate this knob until I'd start to see a clear image. Okay, so for me, I just end somewhere around here. Then I swap over to my other eye, looking through the image through my left eye, closing my right eye, and just rotate until I first see a clear image. Now I've got both of my eyes focused individually. This with the eyepieces as wide apart. Then we do a binocular viewing. So we try to look through both and we just move them closer together until we first get the images coinciding and just overlapping each other or joining each other. So don't go too fast, otherwise you'll find you end up this close, which obviously is much smaller than your PD. So that's because we have a tendency to over converge. So just make sure you go slowly until the images first combine. Once you focus those images, you can get rid of this, just as Peter says, put it in its right place, put the cap back onto here, and you're good to go with your eye check. In here, look what it does as I put it on. So it's a diffuser, so it makes the light source more diffused. So if you want, you can use that when you're doing your examinations under diffuse light. If you want, you don't have to. Last thing we talked about is making sure you're putting in the correct adjustments for your patients. So we want this mark to be in line with the outer canthus. I might draw a little cartoon image there. And you just rotate this to move the chin rest up and down. You make sure your patient's chin is on the chin rest, their forehead is against this bar here. You make sure you clean it beforehand and you clean any areas they might be touching, including here with the alcohol swab. And once you've got them aligned, then you can adjust the chair up and down, or you can adjust the machine up and down just so that their back is more comfortable.